Okay, so where we left off, we were able to create our nested models, meaning we have our recipe model and we can add dynamically ingredients and steps and remove ingredients and steps dynamically, which is great. So that's fairly complex already as it is. But the next thing we'll do in this video is we'll add the functionality for uploading an image to our recipes. So right now they're just text. What we want to do is we want to upload an image. So we're going to use a gem for that, and there's basically 3 or 4 options. But I'm going to point us to the Carrierwave gem. So if you Google with me Carrierwave gem, click the first link, the GitHub link, and we will use the Carrierwave gem in our app. The reason why I'm choosing Carrierwave, there's another gem called Paperclip. It's actually easier to implement, easier to use. Just had a lot of issues with it last semester or last year with students that were on Windows machines, that Paperclip wasn't playing well with Windows machines for some reason. So I'm just not sure. So we'll kind of work together and use Carrierwave. So what we want to do is we want to add gem Carrierwave to our gem file. So we're going to go back into our app, into our gem file. Under nested fields, we'll copy and paste Carrierwave. As always, we will do a bundle install, and we want to restart our server. Okay. The next thing we have to do is we have to generate what's called an uploader. An uploader is actually a model. It creates an entirely new model for us. And it's a model that allows us to upload any kind of file, but in our case, we're going to upload an image file. My bad, sorry. So we will just follow along, and if you have this pulled up, I would have the GitHub page pulled up, and I would follow along. We'll do Rails G, so Rails generate. We're going to generate an uploader, and we're going to call this uploader just image. You can call anything you want. The example documentation has a uploader called avatar. This is for a user. But I'm going to do that. So that generated the uploader. I'm going to do a rake db migrate. Okay. And that should have created a file in app uploaders and then basically a new model file. So app uploaders and image uploader, which is great. This is crazy. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete all of this. Eventually, we're going to have to figure out how to make this work. We're going to figure out how to make this work with Heroku. But at this point, we're not going to worry about that too much. Okay, so all I did was I deleted all of the comments. We're just going to keep this kind of how it is for now. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a tutorial because the Carrierwave documentation isn't great, and that you'll find this to be true for a lot of Ruby gems. Is that some of the documentation is awesome and some of it's not great, and Carrierwave's one that's not super well supported, but there are third-party tutorials, and so I've pulled up a tutorial on code.tootsplus.com, and that is a Carrierwave tutorial. So we'll kind of refer to this as we continue. And so there's a couple things we have to do again as we think through adding a new model to any app. And the first is we always have to, in our recipes controller, whatever you're working on, whitelist a new variable. Meaning we have to allow the new variable to be added to the recipe. So I'm going to add an image to our permissions here, our recipe params down here. So that's the first thing we need to do. Second thing we need to do is we need to worry about our model, right? We need to add our new image to our model to allow our recipe model to add an image. So to do that, we're going to find this little bit of code, and I'll just type it in so you can follow along. It's mount_uploader. And then whatever you're uploading, whatever you're mounting, that's an image. And then capital I image, capital U uploader. So mount uploader image. Okay, so our model's set and our controller's set. Now we need to work on our form. And in our form at the very top, we'll add the ability to upload a file, in our case an image. So we'll add a form group. And in that form group, we will find the code from this tutorial, which is file_field. That's our helper. So we'll go form.file_field. And our file field is for the variable image. So that should allow us to upload an image. And another thing I meant to mention is you should always restart your server after you've installed a new gem. I don't know if we did that, so let's make sure we do that. Okay, so when we refresh the page, the edit page, we see that we have a choose file option, right? So we can upload a file. That's a good thing. So I'll upload my pepperoni pizza. And it's not going to show up, obviously, because we don't have anything in our show view. So let's go to our show view, recipes, show.html.erb. And at the very top, let's view this image. And so to do that, let's go back to this tutorial and find their show view page. And here's their show view page. And the code tells us that we need to open up a Ruby tag. And we need to use the image tag command. And then we need to set our variable. So that's @recipe dot image dot thumb, or no, not dot, dot image dot URL. Okay, so we're opening up an image tag, and then we're calling the variable recipe image, whatever the recipe image is. So now when we refresh, there it is, a gigantic piece of pizza. So there's a few ways we can handle this with the image sizing, but I think we will, I'm just going to put a class on this image. We're going to call it recipe-show. So add a class to this image and call it recipe-show. Then we'll go into our assets folder at the very top, our style sheets folder, and our application.scss. And we're going to just call that image img.recipe-show. And this is not the ideal way to do it. The best way to do it is to actually change the way that the image file is processed, but we're not going to do that right now. We're going to use CSS to change the size. So we'll just say width 500 pixels. Let's go with 400 pixels. Height auto. So we're going to force the image to be, theoretically, there it goes, 400 pixels tall and an automatic height. Okay, so that's good enough for now. We'll decide, you development people, we can work together to decide if we want to try to get ImageMagick or other image processing software involved. But for now, we'll just use CSS. Great, so that works. Now, if we want to actually remove this image, we can't. There's no option to remove the image. So one thing we can do is we can we should be able to, I wonder if it's in this. Nope. Carrierwave has, so I'm back on the Carrierwave GitHub page. They have a little bit of code that allows you to remove, and I just need to find it. Here we go, removing uploaded files. So if we, there we go. We can use this remove checkbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my form, and right next to this upload, I am going to add this bit of code, form.checkbox, and then remove image from the form. So let's see if that works. And there it is. Okay, so I wonder if it will work. So if I click remove image and I click update recipe, it didn't work. I knew it wasn't going to work. That's because we have to go to our controller and we need to whitelist the remove image action as well. So we're going to go all the way to the bottom and we're going to do remove underscore image, and we're going to add that to our permitted variables. So let's see if that works this time. And it doesn't. Let's see, nil is not a valid asset source. So that's a good, and that we know that we're in our show.html.erb, so we know that that's where. So we want to add a bit of code that allows us, so basically this is saying, our error is saying, hey, you're calling for a recipe image URL, but one doesn't exist. So what do we do? So one way around this is if we add a bit of logic, and what we can do is we can do if at recipe.image.url. So if there is a recipe.image.url, question mark, we'll show this, and if not, we just won't show it. So we'll add that little bit of code in. Let's see if that fixes it. And it doesn't like the URL, so maybe if recipe.image, there we go. So it's just if recipe.image. So if there's a recipe image, we'll show it. If there isn't, we won't show anything. Okay? Which is pretty great. That works. Now, a couple things. I think we don't want, that's annoying, sorry. I think we don't want in our form this remove image to show up unless there's an actual image there, right? So in our form, what we can do is we can use that same bit of logic. So we can open up a Ruby tag and we can say if recipe.image, I'm going to move this, actually, sorry. After this form field, I'm going to do if recipe, if there's a recipe image, we're going to have this checkbox here. And actually, we should probably put the image there if it's there, if there's an image there in the form as well. So we actually probably want to view the image that's already been uploaded. So I think if we just pull this bit of code and pull this into the form. So if recipe image, question mark, if recipe image, let's view the image and give an option to remove the image. And if not, nothing will show up. It should just be a blank. So let's see if that worked. Great. So there's no image, so we just have our upload field. Now if we upload an image, let's update. There it is. And if we hit edit, there it is. So we can either replace it or we can remove it. And it shows that it's showing up there. So if we click remove image, let's see if it works. It did. And our logic is working. The last thing we'll do is we want to view the images in on the index page as well. So if we grab from our show page this bit of code, image tag, and we go into our index page, we can, for each recipe, we can just put it in a column for now, and we'll add the recipe image. One thing that I do want to point out is because we've defined our variable here in this loop for each recipe loop, we don't need the @ symbol again. So we're gonna remove this @ symbol, and we're just gonna pull the recipe image. So let's see if that worked. It did not. And again, it says if nil is not a valid asset source, so we only uploaded images for one of our recipes, not all of them, and so it doesn't like it. So what we can do though is we can add a bit of logic, and here's another way to add logic. You can add it right into the tag itself. And so if you just do if recipe.image to the tag itself, that should work. And it's not working. Let's see, syntax error. Maybe it needs to be after the class. There we go. Okay, so, and that's probably, let's see what happened. Did we remove our image? Oh, we did. So let's see if that works. Let's go back to our index, and there it is in our index. So if we added our spaghetti image as well, oops. It should show up in our index as well. Great. So just to recap real quickly what I did there, I added to the existing table a new column where I added the image, and then I added a bit of logic within the code this time, not a separate piece of code. That was just if there's a recipe.image to the end of that little bit of code. Okay, so now that we've got our images all set up, I'm gonna commit this to Git, added image functionality using Carrierwave, and we're gonna push this up to Git. Okay, so that's it for now. We'll style a bit of the home page, and I think we're pretty much done with functionality for the most part here.